Slight risks.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks very much, Ollie. How you doing? Well, it's Wednesday it is, December 4th, 2019. That means it's 3 weeks to Nullag. That's the Irish for Christmas, Nullag. It's 3 weeks indeed until Christmas Day. I'm Richie Allen. Got some really interesting guests for you today. Got a top programme lined up for you. And as usual, your participation, well, I anticipate your participation, so get in touch with the programme through Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter.
Well, bring out the gimp.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, the election is a week tomorrow. It is a week tomorrow. That's Thursday, December 12th, 2019. And we have a candidate. We have a candidate on the Richie Allen Show. Well, you know him very well. John Kitson, the 5G, the anti-5G campaigner, who's been on the programme many times, will be standing for Parliament in Totnes, in Devon. And we're going to talk to him about that in the second hour. I look forward to catching up with John in hour 2. Before that, Michael Rivero returns to the programme. We've picked up the monthly visits again. We did last month after a gap of about 5 months. Michael, newly ensconced in Central Time in the good old US of A. Michael joins us. WhatReallyHappened.com, brilliant website, and the What Really Happened radio show is a must listen as well. Michael Rivero joins us to round up the big news stories of the day. And that is Wednesday's Richie Allen Show, live on Fab Radio 2. Trigger warning, of course, my website and all the other platforms as well. Yeah. Lovely day today. Chilly but lovely. Nice. Icy footpaths. Nearly came to grief a couple of times. Yeah. I've learned not to worry about it. The more stiff you are, you know, the more tense you are when you're running and you're anticipating a bit of black ice on the footpath, the more likely you are to hit one, I found, perversely. So the thing is to just keep running as normal. And when you do hit one, just hope for the best, you know. Cold today. Hey, listen, I want to just say this. Bob Willis passed away today. And a lot of my listeners will know all about Bob Willis. And they will have known more about Bob. Well, they would have known him long before I knew him. I loved watching Bob Willis on The Verdict on Sky. I came to cricket back in 2005. And like a lot of people who find something very late on in life, I became an insufferable arsehole. I became an expert. I love cricket, you see, and I'm obsessed with Test cricket now. Bob was a former England captain, and he played a massive part in a huge England game in the Ashes series of 1981, which became known as Botham's Ashes after Ian Botham. And I've seen all the highlights 1,000 times on the sports channels. In the Ashes of 81, England lost the first test and then drew the second. And then they arrived at Headingley in Leeds, where I've watched Test cricket with my friend Tez. England arrived at Headingley under all sorts of pressure, and Bob Willis took 8 wickets for 43 runs, while Ian Botham was performing heroics with the bat. England went on to win the series. So Bob Willis, very, very good broadcaster, and somebody I really liked watching. Yeshte Gareva on him. R.I.P. Bob Willis. He died age 70 today after a short illness. A really good guy. He had a good innings because he lived more in his 70 years than maybe most people live if they live to be 100. Now, an inquest opened at the Old Bailey today into the deaths of Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones. They were murdered on Friday last on London Bridge. The inquest will be presided over by Alison Hewitt, the chief coroner. And this is a lengthy report, but listen to it because it's very detailed. It's Sky News reporter Mark White with all today's details from the inquest into the deaths of the 2 people who died last Friday. Sky's Mark White.
Yeah, 5 days on from that attack on London Bridge that began, of course, in Fishmongers Hall, we're learning more detail about the events as they pertain to the 2 victims who died, and of course the terrorist who was shot dead. Saskia Jones, 23-year-old, was a criminology graduate from Cambridge University. She wanted to be a police detective. She'd applied for the fast-track entry scheme for the police detective programme. She had been at Fishmongers Hall at a Learning Together event, an event for the education and rehabilitation of offenders. She was volunteering at that when the attack happened, and Detective Superintendent Des Hughes was giving evidence at the inquest. He said that she was stabbed by Usman Khan, that the pathologist's report gave her cause of death as shock and hemorrhaging as a result of a stab wound to the chest. She died less than half an hour after being stabbed inside Fishmongers Hall. The second of the victims to die was Jack Merritt, another Cambridge University graduate who had graduated with a master's degree in criminology. He'd also got a law degree from the university in Manchester, and he was coordinating this event at Fishmongers Hall. He was also stabbed inside that venue by the terrorists. He was actually carried out, according to the evidence given by the superintendent, carried out by police officers a few streets away because of the concern about the still dangerous situation unfolding on London Bridge. Paramedics, doctors worked on him for quite a while, but he was declared dead just before 3:15 in the afternoon, so about an hour and a quarter after he was stabbed. A pathologist gave the cause of death in his case as shock and hemorrhaging due to a stab wound to the chest. And finally, a second inquest shortly after the first one was opened into the terrorist, Usman Khan. That gave his cause of death, again as shock and hemorrhaging, from multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and to the abdomen. The detective superintendent said that the police, when they arrived, armed officers on the scene, had found Usman Khan back out onto the street on the northern end of London Bridge, being restrained by other members of the public when he was shot at the scene. Now, these inquests have been adjourned. They'll be reopened again, more substantive inquests at a date which is still to be decided. That will be presided over by the Chief Coroner, Mark Lucraft QC.
Yeah, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen of Usman Khan. Yeah, so many unanswered questions there. You know, I mentioned on the newspaper review show this morning, only a few days before embarking on this rampage, Usman Khan was paying £1,000 a pop for weight loss injections. It just doesn't make any sense that he would do that. Again, I don't invite you to draw any conclusions from my mentioning that. But it's got to be mentioned. These are things the media need to be investigating. So there's been a NATO conference going on here in London. Of course, I'm in Salford. Down in London. Up the way, down the way. London is down the way, isn't it? 70th birthday of NATO this year. Leaders in London. And as you heard Ollie Barrett on the news, they're saying, in a joint statement, NATO leaders said, to stay secure, we must look to the future together. We got to stay together. And they acknowledged that China and Russia presented big challenges. Jesus wept. They said they would take stronger action against terrorism. All of this comes amid tension because Justin Trudeau, the Premier of Canada, and Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, appeared to be sniggering at Donald Trump when they were caught on a hot mic last night. Trump called Justin Trudeau two-faced. What a load of nonsense. Boris Johnson did hold a press conference, and he was asked one question by the BBC's John Pienaar. Johnson's answer is utterly ridiculous. Have a listen.
Prime Minister, the President of the United States has spoken of his admiration for you. Do you believe that as a leader and as a man that Donald Trump is good for the West and good for Britain? And if so, why?
Well, I certainly think, John, that the United States is the guarantor of, has a massive contributor to NATO, has been for 70 years a pillar of stability for our collective security. And if you want evidence of the willingness of the United States to stand shoulder to shoulder with us, I would point you back to what happened in the case of the poisonings in Salisbury, when, of course, you may remember that country after country stepped forward to expel Russian diplomats in solidarity, Russian spies in solidarity with the UK. And America, the United States, actually expelled 60. And that was a fantastic testament, I think, to the transatlantic alliance. And I draw an unhappy contrast with the posture taken by the leader of the opposition, who I seem to recollect...
Wait for this.
...decided that what we were best advised to do was to comply with the wishes of Moscow and send them samples for checking independently in Moscow. America stood shoulder to shoulder with us then, has done for decades, and is an invaluable ally and continues to be so.
He had a go at Jeremy Corbyn for taking a moderate approach to the claims made against the Russian government. The Russians said, we don't know anything about this alleged attempt to poison Skripal, Sergei Skripal, or his daughter. We don't know anything about it. Tell you what, send us a tiny little sample of this poison, this Novichok, so we can check it against our own stocks. We're saying we don't have anything to do with it. And Corbyn said, well, they're saying they don't have anything to do with it. Send them a little bit of a sample. And Johnson, this is the inverted world we live in, you see. Johnson is saying, well, if we tell you the Russians did it, you better take it and run with it. Bloody Russians. That's one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on the British people. And there have been very many, as we know. This whole Skripal nonsense. Interesting time to bring that up. Apparently the gap, that the lead that Boris Johnson had 7 or 8 days ago in the polls is closing rapidly. It is, apparently. Down to single figures now. And closing, further still. And while Johnson is kind of fanning around with NATO, and you've got all this stuff about the NHS going on, and privatisation, and deals with America to sell off the NHS, Corbyn and his pals, John McDonnell and others, they're just quietly going about their business around the country, telling people, we'll give you more money if you vote for us. And the gap is narrowing, so it is. There you are. Right, so what else happened at this press conference? What else happened? Johnson was asked, Bojo, Mr. Prime Minister, whatever they call him, were you laughing at Donald behind his back? Sky's Deborah Haynes posed that question.
You've been pictured in this Buckingham Palace reception with Prime Minister Trudeau and others apparently having a joke.
Laughing your arse off at Donald.
Maybe at Mr. Trump's expense. Do you not take President Trump seriously?
No, that's complete nonsense. And I don't know where that's come from.
Nonsense. They were caught having a good giggle at Donald. Yeah. Hey, speaking, by the way, of John McDonnell, I just mentioned him. One of the big pledges by the Labour Party is that if Labour forms the next government, the worst off in the country, the lower wage, lower income people on the lesser incomes, on smaller incomes, will be better off by over £6,000, which is a massive promise, right? He was asked to explain this today. Here's John McDonnell explaining it.
We'll scrap universal credit. We'll scrap it.
Universal credit is where benefits that the poorest people in society needed. Benefits, fuel allowance, heating allowance, unemployment assistance, things like that, right? Several different benefits. They used to get them staggered over a monthly period. And the Tories introduced universal credit, which rolled all the benefits into one payment. And it made it very difficult for the poorest people. Very difficult indeed. Particularly because before they went on to the new universal credit scheme, they often had to wait 3 or 4 weeks for payment. And they had no money at all. It's dreadful, right? Right. Terrible thing. Introduced by the Conservative Party. McDonald just said, we'll scrap it entirely.
And we'll stop its rollout, and we'll put in place a package of fixes, of reforms, while we design the full reform, the replacement that will be fit for purpose to ensure people do not fall into poverty. Because that won't help everyone. We need to raise wages across the country so people don't need to rely upon universal credit in the future. And that starts with a real living wage. Yes, £10 an hour straight away for everyone over 16 will end the discrimination against low people within our pay system that exists at the moment for youngsters, often doing the same work but paid so much less. And that means an average pay rise of up to £6,000 a year, a pay rise for 7.5 million people.
You love that. Up to £6,000 a year. Yeah. Hey, listen, are you going to go out and vote next week? I asked this on the live stream on YouTube this morning. Are you going to take your polling card, which I don't think you need anymore, do you? You just need ID. Are you going to rock up to your polling station and cast your vote? Exercise your franchise. Well, 18 million people in the UK will not do that. That's the reality. And these are 18 million registered voters as well. So it's not 18 million people at random. It's 18 million registered voters will not vote. Adrian Childs has been writing about this in The Sun newspaper. He's a BBC presenter. He's making a documentary for the BBC on the non-voters. Of course, in places like Australia, they fine people for not voting, the bastards. Cheek of them. Here's Adam Bolton of Sky with the journalists Matthew Paris and Olivia Utley talking about not voting. This is kind of interesting, I think.
What about voting, though? Adrian Childs, I think he's done a documentary for the BBC, but he's also written this up in The Sun today about the 18 million people who don't vote. He says, what about the 18 million who elect not to vote? I mean, I'm sort of tempted to quote Peter Sellers saying, indeed, what about them?
Yeah, I thought that. It was an interesting piece, though, because I tend to just dismiss the people who don't vote. Well, they chose not to vote. But then he talks about the people there are some people whose lives are just so awful, they're completely detached. There's not much you can do about those people, I don't think. But then the people who feel like their votes don't matter, of which there are a lot, because our first-past-the-post system means that, there are 500 seats in this country which just won't change hands at all. And that is quite a good point. I mean, I live in a constituency with a 21,000 Labour majority. There is absolutely no point in me voting. And I will, but there must be a lot of people who feel like that. And his suggestion is to have a House of Lords, which is...
well over 400 of the constituencies will not change.
Yeah, exactly. He says more like 500. Yeah. And I don't think proportional representation would work in the House of Commons, but I think the idea to have a House of Lords where you get some sort of reflection of the popular vote maybe is quite a good idea and might persuade the people who aren't voting because they don't see the point.
It's amazing, really, that anyone does vote, but because in so few constituencies can you honestly tell yourself that your vote is likely to make any kind of a difference. But people do. And I think the right not to vote is a very precious right. I know in some countries like Australia, it's against the law not to vote. We have every right
of course, you can spoil your paper in Australia. That's perfectly legal, provided you turn up.
Yes, well, why ask people to come in to spoil their papers? If they don't want to vote, why should they vote? And it's a very useful barometer of public opinion to see what the turnout is. It's a helpful sign.
It is, actually, isn't it? I believe that by voting you give it legitimacy. You legitimise it. You legitimise people taking power that immediately swear an oath of allegiance to a German queen and all of her heirs. That's what happens, you see. That's how it goes. I think the more people who decide not to engage with it and begin to look at what's wrong with it, I think that's will ultimately be positive for, the future of people in this country and other countries. Interesting stuff. Hey, listen, speaking of the Queen and swearing allegiance to her and all of her heirs, yeah, I had to laugh today. Do you want to laugh? ITV has recorded a show with Jeremy Corbyn. I think it's recorded one with the party leaders individually. And it's a different type of programme. It's more of a personality interview. I know, insert joke here. So Corbyn's one will air tomorrow, one-on-one, personality, get to know them like, and Julie Etchingham is the host for ITV. Now, a snippet of this has been released. Jeremy Corbyn is asked about watching the Queen on Christmas Day. Do you watch the Queen's speech, do you, Jeremy?
Do you sit down to watch the Queen's speech, Mr. Corbyn?
It's on the morning. You usually have it on some of the time.
It's not on in the morning. It's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when everybody watches it.
Well, our Christmas is sometimes...
You don't watch it, do you, Mr. Corbyn?
Lots to do.
Our Christmas is in a parallel universe, Julie. Our Christmas is in a parallel universe, and actually on our Christmas, the Queen, the speech starts at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's on the morning. You usually have it on some of the time.
It's not on in the morning. It's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when everybody watches it.
Well, our Christmas is sometimes...
You don't watch it, do you, Mr. Corbyn?
Lots to do. I enjoy the presence of my family and friends around on Christmas, obviously like everybody else does, and I also visit a homeless shelter.
He visits the homeless. Useless. Vacuous. Rotten. Liars. Not just Corbyn, every one of them. Totally unreal, these people. No connection to reality at all, do they? And the way he's looking at Etchingham, wait till you see the clip, he's looking at her, as I've said before, like she is dog shit that he would rather scrape from the bottom of his shoe. He is dreadful. Totally unreal, these people. Can you imagine how many points he would climb in the polls if he was an ordinary man? Just a regular bloke, like. You don't watch it, do you, Mr. Corbyn? Julie, listen, Julie. Are you shitting me? That crusty old bastard, Julie. Are you shitting me? Really? That old bibe. You're asking me, am I watching her, Julie? Let me tell you, Julie, by 3 o'clock, I'm asleep on the settee. I've had a crate of Stella, Julie, and half a bottle of fucking Baileys. My belt is undone. My underpants are showing, and you can see one of me testicles. There's cranberry sauce running down me chin, Julie, onto me best Sunday shirt. The dog is sitting on my stomach, licking it off me. But I'm oblivious to it, Julie. I'm oblivious. I'm farting, but I'm so pissed they can't wake me up, so everybody has gone to the next door neighbours. Watch the Queen, Julie. Are you shitting me, love? Are you shitting me?
What kind of fuckery is this?
Vote Jeremy Corbyn. Imagine if he said that. Imagine if he told the truth. Absolutely on me back. Do you ever see the royal family, Julie? Do you ever see the royal family? Ricky Tomlinson. There's your answer. You're asking me, am I watching the Queen at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day? Are you mad, love? I won't wake up till about 5 o'clock on Boxing Day, when I'll be starving for the leftovers of the fucking turkey, love. The turkey. This is the Richie Allen Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester. And the time is 26 minutes past 5. I am Richie Allen. How you doing? Michael Rivero wings in live from the United States after this from Simple Minds. Music from Simple Minds, alive and kicking on the Richie Allen Show. It's 5:30 here in Salford in Greater Manchester. Delighted to welcome back to the programme terrific journalist, great broadcaster, former filmmaker, recently relocated back to the mainland, of course, in the United States. Must watch, must listen is the What Really Happened radio show, and the website, which is a treasure trove of archived articles going back years. WhatReallyHappened.com is a one-stop shop to get the alternative take on some of the biggest stories of the last 20-30 years. Delighted as always to welcome back to the programme our friend Michael Rivero. Michael, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me.
Love having you on. You sound a bit better than you did last time, because last time you were getting used to the snow, my friend. How's the back? How's the back? Has Claire got you shoveling? She has.
Well, actually, that snow melted, but they are expecting more next week.
It's all the climate change, Mike. I don't even want to get into that, because we'd be here all day debating the merits and demerits of climate change. Breaking news this afternoon, and I know the UK news media has jumped all over it and is covering it. Apparently 3 legal scholars have testified today that the actions of Donald Trump in phone calls with the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian president, are an impeachable act, and one of them has actually suggested that Trump should be removed. How serious is this, Michael?
Well, the Democrats, the liberals, they've been after Trump ever since he won an election in 2016. And the president of Ukraine has repeatedly said there was no quid pro quo. We know that the reason Trump basically held up the financing for Ukraine is the other nations that had committed to providing aid to Ukraine basically didn't show up. And so Trump said, well, I'm not carrying this load all by myself. That's the same message he's getting with NATO. So at this point, they're basically just desperate for anything that they can use to try and remove Trump from office.
They're desperate to get him out. I don't doubt you're right. And we've talked in the past about the Senate and the difficulty of any impeachment move getting beyond the Senate. I don't know whether what Trump said or did is right or wrong. Even if he did ask for help looking into Biden and his son, I think it's all a bit of a nonsense myself, really. But regardless, Michael, of what the motivation is behind it, how dangerous is it for Trump now that you've got legal scholars whom, would be seen by most people to be impartial, coming out and saying, this guy's got to go? Is there a chance now this might see the end of Donald Trump?
Well, I would say it's remote because remember, these guys are lawyers.
Yeah.
And by and large, people don't have a lot of trust in lawyers. And I think this is more of the same.
A number of people have asked me to put this to you, Michael. You're as impartial a commentator as I've ever met. And that's true, by the way. What about Trump denying that he knew Prince Andrew? And then lots of pictures show him with Andrew on several occasions. Trump knew Epstein pretty well too, and he tried to play that down. There are a number of allegations that have been made against Donald Trump by various women, and I have no doubt, because of political mischief, that maybe some allegations made against the president are just that, mischief. But he seems to have more than a skeleton or two in his closet, Michael. It's not a good look when you're denying knowing people and then pictures start to surface that prove otherwise. Should Trump be worried about, any unsealing of indictments or documents that pertain to Jeffrey Epstein? What do you think?
Well, at this point, the question is what exactly happened? Now, we know that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were running a honey trap operation to trap American politicians so that they'd be pliant to Israel. Whether Trump fell into that or not, we don't know. We know the Clintons certainly did. They were visiting that New Mexico ranch on a regular basis. Even Chelsea Clinton went out there. And so the question is going to be, what, if anything, did he actually do? And would the American people really care? And I say that because, frankly, this Epstein story really isn't getting a lot of traction.
Is it not in the United States? Because over here, as you'll know, they will not let it go, the UK press. I've never been overtly naive, me. I've learned a lot in recent years about the media and how it operates, and I know what the royal family is and what it represents. So I'm kind of surprised to see it's like a dog with, a toy in its mouth that it will not let go of. It seems to be hell-bent on bringing down at least Prince Andrew anyway, Michael. So I'm surprised that Trump's enemies in the United States have not seized on the Epstein thing at all. But, you mentioned the Clintons. It's a very good point you make. I mean, amongst the most vile people to have ever held public office. Wanton criminals, the Clintons, no doubt. But you talked about Epstein entrapping people because it would favour Israel. We've got to acknowledge, Mike, and this is, of course, just supposition. I don't have any proof of anything. And I don't dislike Trump any more or less than I dislike the Clintons. But there's never been a more favourable president to the Israeli people or the Israeli government than Trump. We've got to admit that, right?
That's true. He's basically, he's family friends with Netanyahu. He's basically handed Israel everything Netanyahu wanted, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, and now, of course, he's saying that the settlements in the occupied territories aren't really a violation of international law. None of which is true, of course.
Yeah.
But it may be that this Epstein honey trap wasn't needed in the case of Donald Trump because he is so pro-Israel.
That's fair enough. You're absolutely right. But I'd love to see Trump asked questions by somebody impartial,
Yes.
about Epstein and about why have you said you didn't know Andrew well? Why have you distanced yourself from Epstein? We know you knew him very well. We know you're pals with the Clintons, but that's neither here nor there. Michael, if this impeachment stuff wasn't happening right now and the presidential election was held tomorrow, I reckon Trump wins in a landslide, does he?
I would tend to agree with you. Kamala Harris has stepped out of the race now. Biden is self-destructing. And I think Trump is going to win re-election unless Hillary Clinton steps in. Now, she's already missed the filing deadline for the New Hampshire primary, but she still won't say whether she's running or not. And I think that if this impeachment gets rid of Donald Trump, she's going to step on in.
Michael, before we talk a little bit about NATO, and then we'll talk a little bit about the terrorist attack in London last Friday, in general terms, I don't expect you to be all over that with a microscope in the way that we are here, but just in general terms. Before that, I wanted to ask you about to something to do with you mentioned Clinton there. She said
yes.
She said she won't stand at all. She's done with it. But you're not convinced of it, Mike. Last month when we spoke, you said that as well. You're seeing some signs that there might be an announcement at some stage.
Yes, I think that if the impeachment gets rid of Donald Trump, she doesn't want to run against Trump. She doesn't want to run against Tulsi Gabbard. So she can maneuver those two out of the way. Then, I think she's going to step on back in. Like I said, she's already missed the filing deadline for the New Hampshire primary. And unless somebody bends the rules for her, that's already starting out with a major negative.
Very interesting. This Michael Rivero is our guest. You know Mike, of course. Check out whatreallyhappened.com if you haven't before. Listen to the terrific radio show. It's great. One of the very few accessible radio shows still left where it's open forum. People get to phone in and chat with Mike there. Mike, just before NATO, one of the things that's been a big issue in our election cycle, of course, we have a general election a week tomorrow, next Thursday.
Yes.
And one of the big issues is climate change, much to the annoyance of myself and others who don't necessarily believe that man is, at least not through industrial activity, changing the climate anyway. But it's been very big stories again today, Extinction Rebellion. Has this Extinction Rebellion movement, Michael, this kind of groundswell of movement of young people, how is that going in the United States? Is it as big over there as it is over here? And if so, Michael, might it be a big issue in November, or in the run-up to November next year?
It seems to be getting a lot of traction along with this Greta Thunberg. But the reality is, here in the United States, we've just had a killer storm that went from coast to coast, and we don't have any snow here out my window, but they had like 2-3 feet of snow in Massachusetts, huge amounts of snow out in the Pacific Northwest. And I think people are just, they're going to be looking at that and saying, all this nonsense about human-caused global warming is just that. It's nonsense. Now they're talking about rebranding it again. Originally it was global warming, then it was climate change. Now they're talking about, scorched earth and, various other names to try and get some PR going. But I think given the severity of the winter that we're dealing with here, I think probably most people are just tuning out all of these personalities, if you will, who are out there saying, yes, the world is warming. You've got to give us your money and let us tell you how to run your life.
Yeah, it's good that people are not being swayed by it. But at the same time, the media is relentless, because you talked about a storm. You get naturally occurring weather events, and everything that happens, it's blamed on climate change. And I don't know if you know this, Michael, or not, but recently the BBC and Sky News told its editorial staff, no longer should you seek balance when speaking about climate change. So even if you've got a scientist with credentials who's worked at a university for years, and he or she says it's nonsense, you don't have to bring them on, Mike, because the science is settled. That's how bad things have gotten here. Michael Rivero is our guest. So NATO, the NATO leaders are in London. They had a reception at Buckingham Palace yesterday, and in a statement they put out, Michael, today, there was a bit of silliness around whether Boris Johnson was joking about Donald Trump behind his back with Justin Trudeau. Just silly media nonsense, really. But what came out of it was this statement about China and Russia again. China and Russia are the big challenges in the near future. Actually, funnily enough, this particular NATO meeting, it's not a summit as such, a meeting, actually talked about climate change as being something NATO needs to deal with, but that's for another day. One of the things they said was, again, they need to look at the increasing threat from China and Russia. Michael, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of things that go on in China and Russia. I'm an Irish guy living in England. I don't feel remotely threatened by the Chinese government or by the Russian governments. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. These nations do not represent a threat to the United States and the West. As is typical that we've seen in history, the United States tries to declare a country to be a threat in order to justify military intervention. But the Russians are basically working on their economy. The Chinese are working on manufacturing. They're building a highway system that's the envy of the world. And of course, they're working on the One Belt, One Road project. And they're not really interested in going into combat against the United States. But as we've seen in places like Afghanistan and Syria, the United States is very eager to project power through military means.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, Michael. One of the things, again, we talk about balance, but just to be realistic, however much of a threat we don't receive, they're not a threat. At the same time, things go on in some of these countries that are very scary. You know, the Chinese, I think I was reading on your website, Mike, because I go to whatreallyhappened.com regularly. The Chinese, they're asking people now who sign up internet accounts to use facial recognition so that their faces can be scanned. And they're also ushering in the last few years this kind of new social crediting system. Stuff is going on in China, Michael, that would have made George Orwell blush. Let's be honest about that. And the thing I worry about is that we'll be dealing with those ideas in our countries real soon. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement. People are already talking about this social credit system, which basically is that your freedom to travel will be based on your behaving yourself. And with the government deciding what is good behavior and what isn't. And it's a way of imposing more control and restrictions on people's comings and goings. And I don't want to see it come here to the United States. But there's a lot of talk about it in Washington, D.C. right now.
There is, and they're tying it in with people's social media accounts, aren't they? You and I have spoken so many times over the years. I mean, you've been predicting this going back years, that eventually, your basic opinions on anything, your opinions on anything, whether it be political, whether it be an opinion on a social matter, will eventually be held against you. You might end up being criminalised because you might say something that somebody else deems to be offensive. And I think that'll be tied in with this social crediting, Michael. We've seen people in this country having the police visit them because they got into an argument with a transgender man or a transgender woman and said something as benign as, not even using bad language, just as benign as, I don't think you are a woman and I wouldn't call you a woman. And bang, the police have been around. That's not an exaggeration. That's actually happened, Michael.
Yes, that's actually happened here. And of course, the worst ones of all are anybody of the Jewish faith who are just ready to start screaming anti-Semitism and Jew hater over the least little provocation. And, my response to that is, go ahead, be offended. I don't care.
Fair enough, Michael. Do you know, it's funny that you mentioned Jewish communities. Jeremy Corbyn has been hammered, the leader of the Labour Party, and you know all about this, for alleged anti-Semitism. But some of his most loyal supporters and defenders, it must be said, are Jewish men and women in the UK who come forward and say, no, this is nonsense. There isn't anti-Semitism. So that's an interesting take on that as well. We've got Michael for another few minutes. Check out whatreallyhappened.com if you haven't before. I know you have. Follow Michael on Twitter as well, at WRH_Rivero, at WRH_Rivero. Follow the man on Twitter. Michael, we had this terrorist attack on Friday, and 2 people have been killed. They opened an inquest today at the Old Bailey in London. A lot of our listeners, and when I say our listeners, I mean our combined listeners, because we share a lot of our audience. I do believe that. I know that to be true. They one of the things they said, and many of these people who listen to you and listen to me, they're moderate. They don't jump in with 2 feet. They think before they speak. And they've said, you know what, terrible thing, but it happened again just before an election. We saw this back in 2017, Mike. We saw it back before the Brexit referendum. Are they right to be a bit suspicious about the timing of the stabbing in London on Friday?
Of course they're right to be concerned about that because fear is a very powerful motivator that can be used to sway large populations toward a given point of view at the ballot box.
Yeah. And then it emerged today, I don't know if you know this yet because we're on different time zones, of course. It emerged today, Michael, the man they've blamed for it who was shot dead on London Bridge, Usman Khan. Very strange story. He was a poster boy for readjustment, Michael, as you know by now. He was he took part in de-radicalisation programmes, and he was actually at the event on Friday to give a speech because, you know, he's one of these jihadists who reformed and re-entered society. But one of the things we learned today about him is that only a couple of days before he embarked on the stabbings on Friday, he was spending £1,000, Michael, on injections that would help with weight loss. Now, I don't know about you, Mike, and I don't mean to be flippant or to try and make this humorous in any way, but it doesn't sound like a guy who's planning on, you know, possibly getting shot dead by the police, who goes to have slimming injections at £1,000 before he does it. I would have imagined that if he was going to go on a stabbing spree on Friday, he might have taken his £1,000, which is not a small amount of money, and he might have given it to his mom or his dad or his brothers and sisters. A lot of weird little facts coming out about this, Michael, that throw a bit of doubt on it, you know?
Well, it's entirely possible that it's another staged false flag incident where this guy was set up as the patsy. We certainly have seen a lot of them here in the United States of America. And again, the goal is to basically terrorize the voters in order to motivate them in a given direction.
And would you imagine, Mike, that because when it happened, 1 or 2 people said on social media, 1 or 2 commentators said, well, it suits the incumbent. It suits.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? So if anybody was going to get a bump from that, it would be the Conservative Party.
Yes.
Right.
I absolutely agree.
So what about your country, Mike? In recent memory, not to put you on the spot, has that happened in the run-up to any major elections in your country, even if it was midterms, even if it was a presidential election? Have you had any, do you remember, because I know it's happened quite a bit here recently, but I can't think of any time in your recent history that you had a major attack just before an election?
Well, basically the timing of our false flag attacks is less connected to the elections and more connected with the agenda of confiscating all the guns from the American people. And so, and so we had the shooting in Las Vegas. We had the Boston Marathon bombing, which that one was so obviously staged. And 9/11 was staged. Certainly 9/11 was used to launch a war. One of the things that we've come to realize is our governments lie to us on a regular, ongoing basis. It's not unusual. It's, business as usual.
Business as usual. And just before we let you go today, thanks for coming back, Michael, by the way. I know you're busy there. Always great to have you on. I've not gone to a polling station since 2002 when I was back in Ireland and I voted.
Yes.
I just believe it legitimizes, to me, it legitimizes criminals regardless
Yes.
of which party. You don't have to answer this because it's, some people, they're very private about it. Would you be inclined to vote, Mike? And I wouldn't think any less of you for it. It's just, but we all have different approaches. I find you a very smart guy. So will you vote next time there's a midterm, next time there's a presidential election?
No, I don't vote. It just seems to encourage the bastards.
There's no better way to leave it today than with that. Michael, brilliant to have you back on. If we don't connect before Christmas, we might not. It'll probably be in January. All the best wishes of the season. Merry Christmas to you and to Claire. They're your first Christmas in your new home. And thanks for all your help, Mike. We love having you on this programme.
Well, thank you for having me, and have a Merry Christmas. And hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you before then. But if not, excuse me.
If not, we'll do it in time. But we might do, Mike. In the run-up to Christmas week, we might find room to have you on. So let's do that. In the meantime, God bless. Get a handkerchief and we'll talk real soon. Cheers, Mike.
All right.
Bye for now. The brilliant Michael Rivero live on the line from his home there. Yeah, good stuff. It's 8 minutes to the top of the hour. It is Wednesday, December 4th, 2019. A number of you are bemused by the story about the fat jabs. It doesn't, you see, I'm not trying to be some, nice guy or, overly professional. You have to be honest. You get places with people. This is unusual. It's unusual that he went to take part in the event on Friday as a man whom had been in prison but whom had reformed. And it's unusual that he had done a few of those events, but on Friday he just flipped, he went mad. Click of a finger, bang, he went mad. That's unusual. What nobody should do, although I'll tell you what, people should do whatever they want, fair enough. What no credible journalist should do is start telling you that this means that the whole thing was... You can't do that because you don't know. You don't know. What I do is I lament that these issues are never discussed again. Excuse me, like it's mentioned today in the Daily Mail. It's not been mentioned anywhere else, and it will not be put to the defence ministers or the defence secretary when he comes on Sky News. No presenter is going to say, hey, listen, we've been hearing some strange things about Usman Khan. Are you sure that the guy was acting of his own volition? Excuse me, but they won't do that. But even though they won't do that, presenters must resist the temptation to jump in with 2 feet and say, oh yeah, well it proves. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't. What it shows is that there are a few holes in the narrative we were given. Right? David says, David Stanford isn't China putting the moves on Deutsche Bank? That means they would be running Europe. Says David, Deutsche Bank wants to replace 14,000 employees worldwide with artificial intelligence. Yes. And to every man or woman who works in banking or who works in finance anywhere in the world, you got to think about the next few years for yourself and for your family, because artificial intelligence is going to be doing everything in terms of financial transactions. 14,000 people they want to kick out of work because the shareholders, they only got £20 million each last year, you know. Fuck everybody else. Is that JP in Manchester? Is it there? I've not heard from JP for it. Is that you, JP? He says, Richie, why was the guy on psychotic drugs? Was he? Was Usman Khan taking antipsychotic medication? I didn't know that. Is that you, JP? Oz Little, I think that's you. I've not heard from you for it. Maybe I have been hearing from you. Just not realised it's you, maybe. That's probably the thing. Long-time listener in Manchester. Right. It's 4.5 minutes to the top of the hour. I'll tell you what we'll do. We will pause for 60 seconds for a message. When we come back, more of your tweets. Don't forget, John Kitson is standing for MP in Totnes in Devon.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Yeah, it's very cold here in Greater Manchester. They're projecting really cold temperatures next Thursday. Now that's interesting. You know, low turnout. This will be the third election in 5 years. Well, in 4 years, really. 5 years. 4.5 years. Right. And people are fatigued, allegedly. They're fatigued. They're pissed off. They're fecked off by it. And 18 million registered voters will not vote, as I mentioned earlier on at the top of the programme, don't you know? And the weather might put others off voting. There might be a very low turnout. Now, traditionally, a low turnout favours the incumbent. What does the incumbent mean? The government. The sitting government. Favours them. If not so many people turn up or turn out, but I don't know. But they're saying the temperatures are going to be freezing next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Looking far ahead. And I was on Piers Corbyn's website, weatheraction.com. And Piers is agreeing, I think, with the projections for next week, the weather forecast for next week. Apparently it's going to be freezing. Keep the tweets coming in at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. In a few minutes' time, John Kitson will join us live. John is an anti-5G campaigner. He's a 5G awareness campaigner, and he's been on the programme a few times. Very interesting man, very well-researched man. And we talked last when he was able to persuade the council in Totnes, in Devon, to slap a moratorium on the rollout of 5G. That was a very successful thing. That was a very good thing to do. We talked to him about that. Well, now he's running. He's put himself forward as an independent in Totnes and Devon, and his name will be on the ballot paper there next week. Very difficult, of course, for any independent without the weight of a big party and lots of money. But he might get a few votes, the lad. Let's hope he gets enough to secure his deposit back. I think he might do that. He's not the only 5G candidate who is standing in the UK. There are a couple of others, and they are well known to John. So we will talk with John Kitson about that in a few minutes' time. And if you've got any questions about that particular issue, about 5G, just tweet them to me. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter, and I will be glad to put them to John on your behalf. Right, it is JP. Tweeting as Quebec. There you are. Yeah, all right. I have a good memory. I remembered at Oz Little. I remember that bit. Right, we're going to get headlines from FSN, so we are. Headlines from FSN. When we come back, we might have a tune. And after that, we're off to Totnes to speak to none other than John Kitson. Here's your headlines.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. NATO leaders have agreed a statement at a summit near London reaffirming their bond despite divisions in the military alliance. Germany's expelling 2 Russian diplomats over the murder of a man in a Berlin park. There have been more than 100 bomb scares in Moscow in the past 2 days, which authorities believe are linked to extortion attempts, and 7 people are confirmed dead in Uganda, and many are reported missing after 2 separate landslides in the east of the country.
Thanks very much, Ollie Barrett. This is the Richie Allen Radio Show. It's live right now from Salford in Greater Manchester. The time is exactly 6 o'clock. Well, it's about 30 seconds past 6. So it is Wednesday, December 4th, 2019. 3 weeks to Christmas Day. I hope you're in good form this Wednesday. Thanks for joining the programme. I love having you on board. Do drop me a tweet. Let me know what you're thinking. We're going to take a tune now. Got the Stereophonics lined up. Stereophonics, and then it's off to Totnes to speak Oh, Jesus, that's the song we played earlier on. You couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery, Richie. What are you doing? Here's the Stereophonics. And after this, John Kitson live on the Richie Allen Show. Stereophonics on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Song's called Dakota. Welcome back to the programme. Wednesday evening, busy old programme, busy old week it is. We've got what have we got? We've got Tommy Sheridan tomorrow, Maria Heller tomorrow on Thursday's programme. Busy old week, as I said, lots going on. Really glad to be reconnecting with my next guest. He's a remarkable man. He came to our attention because he has been trying to raise awareness about the dangers and the health impact of 5G technology, and he's done that very successfully. So he has. He's from Totnes. He's very successful because earlier on this year he managed to persuade Totnes Town Council to declare a moratorium on installing the high-frequency 5G network, which many experts that I have interviewed, including Chris Busby, including Barry Trower, including Alana Freeland, there are many men and women who've said this is a death knell for people, for men, women and children if this is rolled out on our highways and byways. You can find out more about him if you go to the website 5gawareness.com. That's 5gawareness.com. That's where you'll find out all about him. He is standing for Parliament in Totnes, so he'll be on the ballot paper next Thursday, tomorrow week, when you go to the polls in Totnes. He'll be on there. Give him a vote. I'm telling you. I know you'll say, you hypocritical bastard, Richie, because you don't go out and vote. Listen, this is deadly serious. Single issue candidate in Totnes saying the concerns about the rollout of 5G are genuine and they are based on facts, not on conspiracy theory. It's based on facts. Let's welcome him back to the show. He's been in Copenhagen recently. John Kitson, welcome back to the programme. How are you?
Hi, Richie. I'm very well. Thank you for having me back on again.
Great to have you on. Are you on the campaign trail this evening? Are you knocking on doors there in Totnes?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, today, during the daytime, I've been connecting with media, and I've been, trying to knock on doors as well. It's very tough because, I've got my election agent here, but there is still a lot of people, who are quite busy. So it's just a minimal team of people. But I had a lot of financial support from various friends and others online. And I've been connecting with local media here in Totnes. I spoke with the Daily Mail today and just got off the phone with a guy from Bloomberg. So far so good. Just really trying to get the word out.
Yeah, it's lovely that. It's a very difficult thing. I mentioned earlier on, you won't have heard it. And it wasn't in any way to patronise you. I've been covering elections as a journalist for many, many, many years, and I've met many independents, smart men and women. It's difficult going up against the might of the political parties with all of their volunteers and all of their bloody money. So it's an honourable thing to do, John, because it's a very important issue. Remind our listeners, because some of them they might be hearing the Richie Allen Radio Show for the very first time. Remind them why you are doing this. Remind them why you are so concerned about 5G to the point that you've decided to throw your hat into the ring in this election. Remind us.
Sure. Well, I came back to the UK a couple of years ago, and it started off, my mother developed a brain tumour, and I believe it was caused from her wireless landline phone, and she started to get a lot of headaches from that. And and then I started to meet other people who were suffering from something called electrosensitivity, who whenever they would be around Wi-Fi, they would feel ill. And that's when I started to do my own research. And of course, I came across Mark Steele and Gateshead. I went up there. I was at the court cases. I heard about people suffering, their children from nosebleeds. People had lost their partners due to brain tumors. And really serious. And then I went to a couple of these conferences in the UK where there were these doctors speaking, such as Professor Martin Paul, Dr. Erica Mallory Blythe. And then, of course, I came across the very good article in the Lancet journal. And just more and more evidence, and just such damning evidence to show that this is really terrifying technology.
I remember. I remember when we first spoke. One of the things that was, because it's really fascinating for me speaking to people like you, because you were at that point where I was a few years ago as well. You know, you're starting to be surprised by things. Like, you were very surprised when you were hearing learned men and women talking about the dangers of the technology. But you were surprised, weren't you, John, at the time, that these people weren't being heard on local radio or national television. These are real wake-up calls, aren't they, for people? Why are these people not getting an airing?
Well, this is it. And I believe it's due to the power that the telecommunications industry have. We're talking about $1 trillion industry now, and the clout that they have through the mainstream media, such as the BBC. And of course, we saw that recent documentary. I only saw some clips from it, BBC Click, where they were asking, you know, were the concerns about 5G safe? And this chap was holding up a meter next to the mast. And, you know, obviously that meter wasn't switched on, you know, because these give off tremendous amounts of microwave radiation. And unfortunately, it's money, Richie. Money seems to control everything right now. But people are standing up for themselves. And, you know, this scrutiny meeting we had in Exeter a couple of weeks ago, we had over 100 people turn up to challenge the council there. So, yeah, there's a lot of exciting developments in Devon. And I think we've just got to keep just using all the effort and might we have to get the word out, despite the mainstream narrative.
I was really impressed with what you achieved in Totnes by getting the council to declare a moratorium. I'll tell you why. Because there are a lot of people who agitate in the independent media, but they don't ever do anything. It kind of reminded me, sometimes the independent media reminds me of the meetings between Reg and his followers in The Life of Brian. You know what I'm talking about, John? When they all meet, but they don't do anything. You know, they meet and they complain. And I don't mean to insult anybody by saying that. I'm guilty of it myself sometimes. And you went down there and you made a cogent argument, a lucid argument, and you had the facts to back you up. And you showed that if people did get off their bloody backsides, they've got, you know, they can make a change. And you did that. That was a remarkable thing, that moratorium.
Yeah, thank you, Richie. This is the thing, you know, we have the power. And this is what we've got to realize, you know, that there's all this stuff coming in and, you know, we're hearing about all these awful things. But it's about people getting up off the backsides, taking action and doing something. And, you know, when there's enough pressure, that's when things can be achieved. And it's incredible, you know, when you just get one person, you know, they convert themselves to an activist, even if they're working, they're doing a full-time job. If they just, you know, commit a few hours a week to trying to create some change in the world, I truly believe that they can have an impact, and they'll get support, you know. Yeah. And I just think it's also about just not having any fear. You know, I think we get tested a lot in our lives, and, you know, sometimes things go wrong. But at the end of the day, you got to look to your heart and look to do what's right, you know. And then truly, I believe you can then have a fulfilling life. You know, it's about making change. You know, we can't do everything in this lifetime, and sometimes we'll make mistakes, sometimes we fail. But I want to live my life at least knowing that I did something.
That you didn't sit idly by. I really appreciate that. And in the event, and again, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I've got to be. I know you're a very realistic man. In the unlikely event, although maybe stranger things have happened, but you managed to win the seat there. You have said, to your credit, that if you got in as MP for Totnes in Devon, you wouldn't take a salary. You would use that money for worthy causes. I like the idea of that, John.
Definitely. Because, you know, I mean, we've seen the expenses scandals, and, you know, I believe a lot of people just don't have a lot of trust in their MPs nowadays, and especially when you've got all of these lobby groups. And I think, yeah, you know, we could do a lot more to really look after the areas that we represent, that our MPs represent. And I think that giving back to the environment, I mean, a lot of people in this constituency care about the environment. And I just think, you know, that's something I could do. I mean, it's £80,000 that MPs are now getting per year. Yeah. And that's not including expenses, you know, that's on top. So it's a ridiculous amount of money. And obviously, you know, I donate to groups that are genuine green. We're not talking about this, you know, Extinction Rebellion, fake green movement. Groups that are genuinely looking to clean up the water, also prevent 5G. I mean, you know, I'll put all my effort, because obviously if they roll that out, then it's game over for all of our trees, all of our wildlife. But yeah, I just think it's a way in that I'm able to get the message out there that I care and I want to protect the environment around us.
Thanks for that. Is there any truth? There's a few questions coming in. Is there any truth that the technology was developed in Israel? Now, JP in Manchester is asking this. We know that the Israelis are very good when it comes to tech. We know that. They're very, very savvy. They've got a lot of top minds there. Is there any truth that the 5G rollout here is a system that the Israelis didn't like because it was too strong or too dangerous? Is there any truth to that, or is that just a wacky conspiracy theory?
Well, I mean, I know that Qualcomm, from what I understand, is an Israeli company, and that some of the technology, I know that there was some video I saw a while back looking at the technology in cars and how Israel had created that technology, or some of it's Israeli. But to say that, Israel's behind all of it, I don't have the confidence to support that argument. But I would just say that I really don't know the extent, and that's not my speciality. Mostly I've been looking at health, but I know that China is rapidly rolling out 5G.
As well as Japan,
social credit system, Japan as well. They're totally falling for it out there, and that's because they don't really question the government. What the government says goes. Yeah. And but what I understand is that Israel is having 5G rolled out there. I've heard that from a number of sources. So, yeah, I think they're probably also facing the same situation as we are.
No doubt.
It's not my area of speciality, but what I understand is that every country's facing this 5G rollout, although there is more resistance in some countries than others.
No doubt. Yeah, I don't think the questioner was implying that it's some sort of Israeli or Zionist plot at all. I don't think he was suggesting that. Maybe I phrased the question poorly. No, he was just wondering, because it obviously isn't some sort of Israeli plot, but he was just wondering if there was any, because, Israel being such a small place, if they hadn't chosen to use a particular version of 5G that is dangerous. I think the questioner was asking, we might be getting something that another country has decided is dangerous. But on that, we know that the Belgian health minister, has said, and I've not been able to follow up that story, John, to find out what has happened in Brussels, where the environment minister and the health minister said, listen, we better not roll this out yet because we don't know if it's safe or not. Do you know, has there been any follow-up to that there? I can't find one.
Right. All I know is that, the Brussels Times, now this was back in October, was the last thing I heard. And the environment minister was saying there that, there's no rush to really bring this out, and that they were continuing to be hesitant in terms of bringing out this technology. I haven't heard that, okay, we definitely won't be having it 100%. But as far as I know, they're trying to delay things. They're trying not to have this technology rolled out there. And it's mainly on environmental concerns. And this was the, it started off with the previous Minister for the Environment, Celine Fremolt.
Yes.
And, just they're very, very skeptical about it, having any benefit for them. And I really support what they're doing. But that's the best that I know at the moment.
Loads of questions for you that you won't be able to answer, but we'll rattle through a few of them anyway. Although you might be. These are speculative ones. Isn't it interesting that the parties, all of them, have got in their manifestos promises to improve broadband speeds around the country? And they do. And I began to notice a few weeks ago, and I can only speak for me, I can't for sure say that this is a national thing or even a local thing. But I would be outside the house, and I don't use my phone when I'm out very often. I've learned a lot over the years. These are dangerous things. They give off radiation. I try not to use it. I'm outside anyway, so of course when I'm outside, I'm using 4G. And, well, for quite a long time, it was incredibly fast. But I've noticed in recent months that it's incredibly slow. And when I said this on the radio show some weeks ago, I got a lot of correspondence from people who said, Jesus, Richie, I've noticed the same thing. My 4G phone is just not doing so well. And of course, John, you're bound to wonder, is 4G being slowed down deliberately? I wonder. What do you think?
It wouldn't surprise me, Richie. I mean, I think they'll try every last tactic in the book to really push this technology out there, especially when there's more and more people getting outraged about the health concerns. And again, this is just another little trick in their bags. And I mean, yeah, I've had friends tell me the same thing, in fact. And, you know, I don't find if I put my phone on 4G, I mean, I try not to use 4G at all. I have it on a 3G only setting. But I've heard the same from others. And with the Wi-Fi, I've found that actually that's extremely slow if you're trying to upload a YouTube video. So what I tend to do, I go to my friend's house and I just plug in the LAN cable so that it's all wired in, and it uploads at about 4 or 5 times the speed as it would on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think there's something
against Wi-Fi.
I think there's something up, John. Although, you know, as mature in terms of mature of mind, gentlemen, we won't make any declarations that we can't substantiate with evidence. So it's just a thought. John Kitson is our guest, and John has been working very hard over the last year or so, 2 years, to raise awareness about the danger of 5G technology, and he's had quite a bit of success in doing that. The general election takes place a week tomorrow on December 12th. John is standing in Totnes in Devon, where he had success recently persuading the council there to put a moratorium on the technology. He needs your help, so go to the website 5gawareness.com. That's 5gawareness.com. You might be able to send him a few quid. If you're not able to do that, if you are, all well and good. If you're not, help him out. You know, if you're in Totnes and Devon, get out there, get some leaflets. You know, don't wait for John to give you leaflets. Make some leaflets up. Mention that he's the candidate, that he's talking about 5G. Hey, John, I can't speak for the UK, but I can speak for Ireland. The media, the local media anyway, let's talk about the media in Devon. It has an obligation to give you access as you are a candidate. It has an obligation under Ofcom regulations. How are you doing there getting coverage by the local media, the local radio, the local TV?
Right. Well, in fact, Totnes Times here featured a story on me running as an independent, and I didn't even get in touch with them. So that was really fortunate. And I just finally managed to reach out to them today, because I've had about 3 5G events over the last 2 weeks. And then I was over in Denmark for a few days. But I got back in touch with them and I said, hey, look, actually, I'm also giving back my salary. And I'd really appreciate if you could mention that, because there's a lot of people who care about the environment. I got in touch with with Devon Live, who run the Herald Express. So they said they'd run something on it. And yeah, so far they've been quite helpful. I mean, ITV West Country had me on for a couple of minutes. And then, of course, they had another chap on who was saying, oh, you know, it's no problem. But they actually included, when I mentioned about the Lancet article, which is fantastic, I encourage everybody to download and print a copy to show to people. They actually took a screen capture of the article that is showed in the news clip. So, yeah, I was quite pleased with their coverage. But in terms of the local coverage, it's been great. But then, of course, the Times did that awful disinformation article talking about conspiracy theorists. But what do you expect when you've got Murdoch, who's in charge of the Times?
Of course, this is it. This is what you're always going to be up against. And there are a couple of other candidates, and they are known to you, who have, like yourself, have put their names forward around the country. Do you want to let us know about them? We'll give them a mention as well. Yeah,
sure. So you've got Emma Victoria Johnson, and she's running for Bournemouth East as MP. And you can find her through Facebook. And there's also Lee Garrett. And now Emma's website is emmavictoriajohnson.uk. And then Lee Garrett, he's also got a YouTube channel as well, which is Lee Garrett. That's GARRETT, I believe. And you can find them on the internet. Lee's running on a sort of pro-Black Brexit platform, and Emma's just running against 5G. So I definitely recommend having a look at them and looking at what they're up to. And I think it's great that we've got other people making a stand
No
against
doubt.
5G in the country.
Let me ask you, we've got John Kitson.
Lee Garrett for Blaydon MP, Blaydon.
For Blaydon. I'm making a note of this now myself there. EmmaVictoriaJohnson.uk is the website, Bournemouth East. And Lee Garrett, Blaydon, he's running on a pro-Brexit platform and anti-5G. That's good news. Now, have you been to hustings? Have you been able to, as far as I've understood from following you on Twitter, you have been face-to-face with the other candidates, is that right?
That's right. I joined a hustings at one of the colleges where I showed a 10-minute video including, and then I just had a minute to speak. And I included the effects on phone masts on animals in France. There was a Blumenthal clip, another clip on the blood cells being affected by the smart meter. And then there was one in the evening where I was up against Sarah Wollaston. And of course, she's the lady
A doctor, if you please. Go ahead.
Yeah, she's the lady who came out against David Noakes, who, of course, they're trying to extradite to France for helping thousands of people around the world with juicy
Wollaston. Yeah. That's right. I've had David on many times talking about that. I have a lot of sympathy for him, no doubt about that. So she was there. I'm delighted that you got to show a 10-minute film and have a chat. How do you think it went down? What was the reaction to it when people were hearing about this, about 5G and the dangers?
Right. Well, basically, I mean, some of the students from the afternoon hustings, they came over and spoke to me. They were quite surprised. They said they were going to look into it, which was great. But then there were a lot of students, in terms of the questions, no one asked one about 5G. It was about student loans, the NHS. And then the same in the evening, unfortunately. We didn't have any questions. This is from the Brixham audience, where we had 400 people. After my 5-minute introduction, nobody really asked about 5G. So I was a little bit disappointed by that. But I made the good use of my 5 minutes in the evening to actually read out the space appeal that I feel is a very powerful one.
Yeah.
And just to show photos, you've got Lee Garrett's son in Gateshead, who's been bleeding by the nose, who's living near one of these street lights with the antennas on. And then I challenged Sarah Wollaston on silencing David Noakes. And of course, she also helped to shut down the this alternative cancer care conference that Steve Hopwood was holding in Totnes.
She did, John. And tell me this, what was her response when she was challenged about those issues?
Oh, she became pretty cross. Yeah, she said, I don't support quackery. And of course, that's the standard response from GPs now who don't really like to consider alternative healthcare. But, when you look into the history of healthcare and what's happened with the shutting down of the medical schools and the Rockefeller and Carnegie foundations, it's really quite damning. And I just think that it's quite concerning, this line against homeopathic medicine.
Yeah, it's dreadful. I started covering this back in 2009 on the radio in Spain, when the European Union first started to noticeably try to crack down right across Europe on homeopathic remedies. It's dreadful. It's been going on for years now. Hey, John, I wanted to ask you this. There's a great irony here. I absolutely believe that you are correct, 100% correct, that 5G technology is going to be devastating for plant life and animal life, and it's going to devastate us. I've no doubt you're absolutely right. Isn't it incredible that the so-called Environment Party, the Party for the Planet, the Greens, don't give a rat's arse about 5G, do they? Have the Greens even said anything on this at all? Ever? Not to my knowledge.
Unfortunately not. I mean, we have a mayor here in Totnes who's been quite concerned about 5G, but at the same time, she's very keen on Totnes declaring a climate emergency. And of course, we know that is about rolling out the 5G technology. And of course, we had a chap by the name of Justin Walker went to the Green Party conference and challenged Caroline Lucas to her opinion on 5G and why she wasn't doing anything about it. And he was physically taken out of the building. That just goes to show that, that they're really not looking into this enough, and they're just ignoring the problem. And none of the political parties are really dealing with this. And unfortunately, it is the Green Party that are backing the climate emergencies and the rollout of electric cars, LED streetlights as a solution to lowering the carbon footprint, which ultimately is an attack on life, because of course we need CO2. It's required for plants to grow, and we breathe out CO2. I mean, if we have zero net CO2, then how are we supposed to breathe? You know, it really doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense at all. What did you think today about Extinction Rebellion gluing themselves to an electric bus? They're not the brightest people in the world, are they, John?
They're not. I mean, you know, you saw them get on top of the train as well in London, the electric tube train, and they just got pulled off. And I met this chap, actually. I was giving a talk near Birmingham, and I know this guy, you know, he lives off-grid, and he was naming Extinction Rebellion as the last rebellion. That I thought is quite interesting, because if you look at their name, Extinction Rebellion, it's like extinction of the rebellion, and perhaps this is what they're looking to do, truly demonize independent rebellion and protests so that protesting is outlawed. And I wouldn't be surprised if the government responds in such a way. You know, they see all these protests, or they allow, obviously, you know, we know the police are allowing them to do this, the government's allowing them to do this. And then finally they come out and say, oh, actually, I'm sorry. They're causing so many problems. We're going to criminalize protesting or take some sort of action against protesters.
While I'm speaking with you, you have my undivided attention, like all my guests do, and I'm not just saying that. I'm not looking for any credit for that. You have my undivided attention. Stuff gets sent across my screen all the time from various news agencies. And Manchester United today, bizarrely, have put on their, this is not related to you, but I know you're interested in all of these things, on their Twitter page, has put an image of a heart, and half the heart is a Syrian flag, and the other half of the heart is an LGBT flag. Programming, John. It's going on 24 hours a day, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you put your bloody head. I'd love to know why Man United are doing that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's not relevant to what you were talking about. So you've got a few days then to get the word out to as many people in Totnes as you possibly can. You will have had to pay a deposit. I hope to God that at the very least you get your deposit back, John. And if you do manage to pull off an exceptional result down there, I'm coming down there, mate. I'll be down there. In one arm I'll have a case of Guinness, a draft, and in the other arm I'll have a case of champagne. I'll be the first one down there to congratulate you.
You'll be welcome, Richie. We'll put you up here. You know,
Amazing.
Definitely. You need to come down and give a talk. It would be great to have you. I mean, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And I mean, if there's anyone in the area at all that has time on December the 12th to come and be a counting agent, I'd be extremely appreciative of that, because I can appoint 15 people to do that in Totnes. And it just gives, you know, me a bit of confidence that, okay, at least there are people out there looking out for me so that the votes aren't being manipulated when they're being counted.
Yeah.
And this is the thing you've got to have your eye on so much. I mean, with the printing, you know, I had to get in touch with Royal Mail. There's actually a lot to do running as an MP, but it was really worth it, because when you do run, Royal Mail will deliver, you know, tens of thousands of leaflets for free. All you need to do is get them printed and get them approved. So, you know, it's been quite a battle, but finally I managed to get them approved, and then it's sort of last minute premium printing, getting the printing done, and that should be with Royal Mail on Friday, and then posted out after that. So hopefully everybody should get them in time. But it's been tricky, because Royal Mail will come back, they'll say, oh, you've made this error, and then I've corrected it, and then they found another error, rather than let me know all the problems with the leaflet. So it's just delay after delay.
Well, you'll have a great, you know, I don't mean, again, this is not meant to sound patronising, because it isn't. You'll have a brilliant story to tell when it's all said and done. I mean, not only will you still have plenty to do in getting the word out about 5G, which you'll continue to do in 2020, no doubt, but you know, you're getting an insight into something there that maybe a lot of people don't get. So, you know, it'll be very valuable hearing all about that. Listen, mate, I want to wish you the very best. I want to first of all remind our listeners to go to 5gawareness.com. That's 5gawareness.com. Subscribe to the newsletter there. If you can donate to John's efforts in Totnes, do help him out there. John, I'm going to whack you a donation myself later on, because it's the least I should put my money where my mouth is, so I'm going to do that later on. I don't know what it will do for you, but I hope it'll be of some use to you. If you can help John out, 5gawareness.com. And just the very best of luck, mate, next
Oh, I
week.
really appreciate it, Richie. And I was just going to say, we've got Barry Trower, who's going to be coming and giving a talk on Wednesday, the 11th of December, and that's at the Totnes Civic Hall on the Market Square. And the information on that is on my events page at 5gawareness.com. And it's a free event, and it's at 7:30 p.m. So feel free to come, bring your friends, invite your counsellors along, maybe give your counsellors a lift.
Mention it again, John. Mention it again.
Yeah.
Where and when. Remind our listeners where and when.
Yeah, Barry Trower, The Shocking Truth About 5G and Wi-Fi. And it's on Wednesday, the 11th of December at the Totnes Civic Hall, Market Square at 7:30 p.m. in Totnes. And the information is all on my website, 5gawareness.com, on the events page. And it's a free event.
Brilliant. And to donate to your election campaign, the best way to do that is to donate at 5gawareness.com. Is that the best way to do that?
Oh, so yeah, I've got I'm going to put a poster on that. People can go to my Facebook, John Kitson, and I'll have it on the Facebook there. It's also on Stop 5G, pinned at the top. But I'll put a link to it on my website as well, and they can donate to that, and that'll help me get the word out even more through social media. It'll help me, just advertise the Barry Trower event and just really help with the election campaign.
Good luck with it, mate. Very, very, all the best of luck with it. I think you're a top man, and I think you're doing a great job there. The success you had with the council is a testament to you, and I hope you get a sizable vote next week, whatever else happens. John Kitson, all the best, my friend. Look forward to hearing about it very soon.
Thank you so much for having me again on the show, Richie. It was a pleasure.
Anytime, mate. That's John Kitson there, live, Totnes and Devon. He's on the campaign trail, 5gawareness.com, standing for MP there in the election next week. His name will be on the ballot. And the very best of luck to him. And he mentioned, and I did write it down very quickly. Here you go. It is also Emma Victoria Johnson. She's standing in Bournemouth East. Emma Victoria Johnson, Bournemouth East, on an anti-5G platform. And her website is emmavictoriajohnson.uk. Okay? And you've also got in Blaydon, that's Lee Garrett in Blaydon. If you Google Lee, you'll find out all about that. Lee Garrett in Blaydon. And he's standing on a pro-Brexit, get the hell out of the European Union platform. That's his platform. But also anti-5G as well, Lee Blaydon. John has sent me an election flyer. I don't know if I'll be able to share that on Twitter. I'll try anyway. Thanks for that, John. And I'll see can I download it and share it on Twitter. If not, my website is problematic for me at the moment. I don't have access to it. I'm not being locked out of my website or anything like that. It's just I don't have access to it. So I'll try and do something about that. See can I get it on the website. Anyway, here's a tune from Johnny Cash. It's a song called A Boy Named Sue. Yes. Bit of country. Marvellous. Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue. Well, there's no prizes. I'm not going to give you any prizes. But which prison version is that song from? Which prison recording was that taken from? Do you know? I bet you do know. I bet you William knows in Scotland. We got Tommy Sheridan on the programme tomorrow. Maria Heller joins the programme tomorrow as well. Yeah. I voted back in 2002, the last time in the Irish general election. I've told you this before on the live stream. And Ireland's got the proportional representation system, and I explained that on a live stream recently. It's the single transferable vote. It means that when you go to vote, you get a list of all the candidates, the same as you would if you voted in England. But in Ireland, there is a box alongside each name. And you get to assign each candidate your preference. So the person you love the most, you give them number 1. And then your second favourite, you give them the number 2, and so on. Now, your constituency might be sending 3 members of parliament. In Ireland, it's TDs, Chuck the Doyle. Your constituency, your city might be sending 3 or 4 members of parliament back to Dublin. So you get a say, basically, in all 4 of them. That's the theory. So there will be a quota. there will be a number of votes that is needed to get yourself over the threshold and get your seat in Parliament. So it might be 30,000 votes, say. So they count all the number ones. If somebody has more than 30,000, they go to Dublin. If they don't, they count all the number twos. Even if somebody has all the votes needed, the 30,000, after they count the number ones, they still need to elect 3 more Choctaw, 3 more TDs to send to Dublin. So they start counting the number twos and the number threes, and that's how it goes. That's proportional representation, you see. So back in 2002, I will tell you the parties I voted for, 1, 2 and 3, but not in that order. I won't tell you which order I voted them in, but the parties I would have been interested in were Sinn Féin, Republican Party, the Socialist Workers' Party, yes, and also the Workers' Party. Those were the 3 parties that I would have given my votes to. I'm not going to say which one I gave number 1 to, because 2 of the gentlemen, a gentleman for Sinn Féin and a gentleman for the Workers' Party, I knew them very well and I was very friendly with them. So it was a difficult choice, but I haven't voted since 2002 because I know that it is a crock of horse shite. Doesn't matter who gets in. The system prevents anybody, any man, any woman or any party from doing anything. Chris Morrell says, and it's not for the first time, Chris, you're boring the shit out of me. Not without a sense of irony. Not without a sense of irony, Chris. Yes, mate, I know the Eurovision voting is conducted along the lines of proportional representation. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for telling me again. How you doing, Chris? Hope you're well. It is Folsom Prison. Yes, that's right. Folsom. 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 Folsom Prison. That must have been a pretty brave thing for Johnny Cash to do, considering that there wasn't a barrier between him and convicted murderers and rapists. It was just him there singing on stage. It's an amazing thing, that album, Johnny Cash Alive. Chris is right, yeah, the Eurovision voting goes along the same way. A number of activists in this country, a number of political parties have said that really there should be proportional representation in the UK also. And they point to the 2017 election in the UK as a classic example of why proportional representation would be more fair than the current system here, which is first past the post. That's how it works in the UK. First past the post. They count all the votes. Whoever's got the most wins. That's it. And what that means is that in constituencies up and down the country, it's not worth people's while going out to vote, even if they believe in the system. Because dozens of constituencies have been Conservative parties since 1850 and have been Labour parties since 1850, and so on, so on, so on, so on. You get the picture. But during the last election, 2017, Nigel Farage's UKIP party actually achieved 5 million votes when you added up all their votes around the country. 5 million people. 5 million people. 5 million. Channeling Danny DeVito here. 5 million. And they didn't get a single seat in Westminster. Not one. Yet 5 million people in the UK favoured the United Kingdom Independence Party. Didn't they? Yeah. 5 million. So you've often had political parties, particularly the smaller ones, saying, look, we deserve more seats than we have. In fact, we don't have any seats. We deserve a few. And if you added up all our votes, our vote share might be 8%, 9%. But we don't have 9% of the MPs in Parliament. In fact, we've only got 2. So you get it, right? You get it. So I don't have to keep explaining it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Jeremy Corbyn was asked about the Queen's speech earlier on. We had a giggle at that, didn't we, in the monologue? And he didn't know. It's all academic, really, because when Jeremy is returned to Parliament, Jeremy will take a new parliamentary oath. He will yet again swear true allegiance to Queen Elizabeth II and all her heirs, so help him God. That's what the Champagne Socialist will do. He won't take an oath to work day and night to help improve the lives of the people in Islington. No, fuck no. No, God, no. Why would I do that? No, I'll swear to keep a scruffy German fucking immortal tyrant on the throne in London, and her jug-eared son and her paedophile friend, her paedophile befriending Andrew Charles. That's what he'll do. That's what he'll do. Jeremy, the socialist. Drives me mad. 11 minutes to the top of the hour. Drives me mad, I tell you. So you've not been answering me. I posed the question earlier on. I posed it. I said, will you go and vote next week? And you're hiding from me. You're terrified to say, yes, I am. Because you think I'll think less of you. Of course I will. Of course I won't. I'm not God. I don't make the rules. I don't have a switch on my back that I switch it and it makes me right. It gives me divinity. I'm not right. It's just my opinion. I won't vote. I voted in the... I know it sounds very hypocritical, doesn't it? I don't vote. I voted. I went to the polling station in Fallowfield on June 23rd, 2016 for the crack. And I took a photograph of my ballot, which is illegal, allegedly, and voted to leave the European Union, just for the hell of it. But in an election, in a local election, in a general election, no, it's foolish and silly. Even when I voted in the referendum, I thought it was foolish and silly, because I thought the whole thing would be fixed. What did I know? Maybe it was. What do I know? I don't know. So there you are. It's coming up for 9.5 minutes at the top of the hour. I'm not going to waffle on until about 5 to. I'm not going to waffle on. I'm going to take leave of you 5 minutes earlier than normal. I'm taking my leave of you. And I'm going to go get this program onto iTunes, to Spotify, to Podomatic, as usual. Faisal is piped up there as a Faisal. Someone should ask Edward. Yes, Edward. Is he the youngest? I think he's the youngest, isn't he? You've got Charles and then Anne. Is that right? Yes. Then Andrew and then Edward. Somebody should ask Edward, pose the question, Eddie, dear boy, know any paedophiles, do you? They love their pedos. The royal family love their pedos. Elon Musk, of course, is giving testimony today in a defamation case against him. One of the divers who rescued the boys in the cave in Thailand had a bit of a spat with Elon Musk because Elon Musk said, I'll send a submarine there, special submarine. And one of the divers said, piss off, you muppet. And Elon Musk called him a pedo. So that's a defamation case, which he probably should lose. Although the burden of proof is on the diver to show that his reputation has been damaged. That's what it comes down to when it comes down to libel. Can the diver demonstrate that his reputation has been damaged? Has he lost work? Has his standing in the community diminished somewhat because Elon Musk called him a pedo? Jesus Christ. But that's going on. It's going on at the moment, Elon Musk. Right, that's it for me. Big thanks today to Michael Rivero. He's had a difficult year, Mike. I love Mike. And Claire, his wife. He's one of the good guys, Mike. And I really regard Mike as a pal, but I regard him as a journalist. He's a great guy. I don't care if he says things I disagree with. That's what makes me love him even more. He's a top man. And a big shout out again to John Kitson, 5gawareness.com. John standing in Totnes and Devon in a week's time. I hope he does very well. Let's hope he gets his deposit back. That's it for today. Going out with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and a tune called Under the Bridge. Look after yourselves and one another, by the way. Thanks for choosing the Richie Allen Radio Show. I'll speak to you tomorrow morning, Thursday, on the YouTube live stream. Until then, bye.